Italy has elected its most right-wing government since World War II. The Brothers of Italy party has installed its leader Giorgia Meloni as the first female Prime Minister of Italy. And amid Russia's halt in gas deliveries to Germany and skyrocketing energy prices in Europe, Scholz traveled to the Gulf countries to secure alternative supplies for his country's energy-hungry economy. Also in today's discussion, Tuesday is the final day of a ballot for Russian-held regions of Ukraine, which the government in Kiev and its Western allies dismiss as a sham. This is All 24 News special coverage. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Karim Zachary. So, from political wilderness to pole position to become Italy's first female prime minister, this is the moment Giorgia Meloni has been waiting for all her political life, since she first started as a far-right teen activist in a working-class district of Rome. And here, let me bring in our guest to discuss further. Joining me live via Skype from Italy is Mr. Mark Lowe, expert on international relations, and from USA, Mr. Michael Springman, political commentator and former diplomat, as well as Mr. Harley Schlenger, vice president of the Schiller Institute from Germany. And here in our studios, we have Mr. Shoaib Boutamin. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us. Mr. Shoaib Boutamin is a gas and oil advisor and CEO of Rana Drill. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. So let me start with you, Mr. Springman. It seems that lowering electricity and gas bills and changing the Italian constitution are both on the agenda of the Brothers of Italy party as they begin to think about forming a new government. What other challenges, if you've been following, do you think that Giorgia Meloni is going to face as a new prime minister? And of course, this does not apply just on Italy. We can actually apply that on so many other European countries.
Meloni and the other European countries are still having to deal with the waves of illegal immigrants that are flowing from sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. A situation sparked by former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. They and all of Europe are dealing with a shortage of energy caused by the European Union's support for America's illegal and unconstitutional war against the Russian Federation. They have slashed sanctions on Russia. They have blocked exports to Russia. They have blocked Russia. And they've given money and weapons to the Nazi government of the Ukraine, headed by this crazy man Zelensky. And in return, the Russians have said, we will start restricting supplies of gas and oil and other commodities vital to the European economy, as well as to Italy. And the people don't get the word that they are cooperating with the Americans to destroy the Federation, and they themselves are being destroyed economically by the fact that they don't realize the consequences of their actions.
Very nice indeed. And Mr. Springman,
let's solve this.
Yes, Mr. Springman, analysts do suggest that Meloni may find herself with a complicated budget situation exacerbated by the rising energy costs amid the war in Ukraine. And the case of many European countries, as you've been highlighting, how do you read the situation of the energy crisis in general? And how can this be an opportunity for the US to sell its products in Europe?
The United States has been pushing for an energy crisis in Europe, intending to sell liquefied natural gas at much higher cost than the Europeans could buy the pipelined gas in its gaseous form from Russia. The Americans opposed and put sanctions on Nord Stream 2, the pipeline that has just been completed and is now shut down as German actions. So they essentially have cut off their nose to space. The Americans see a vast market, but they still have to liquefy the natural gas, put it on board a ship, sail it to Europe, build it in more container terminals to cover the flood of energy that Europe really needs. In Italy, for example, there's about 100,000 small and medium-sized businesses sailing. Something like 80 or 90% of the population is cutting back for food and transportation to cover energy costs. So I think this is an entirely wrong-headed way of dealing with this. We need peace with Russia. We don't need a proxy war using the Ukraine, where the Americans are willing to fight Ukrainian for their particular political interests.
Let me here bring in Mr. Schlanger to the conversation. Meloni-led government, Mr. Schlanger, is largely expected to follow Italy's current foreign policy, including her pro-NATO stance and strong support for supplying Ukraine with weapons to defend against Russia's invasion, even as her own coalition or allies take a slightly different tone. How do you think she, or any European country for that matter, such as Germany, since you're there and have a better insight, can still support Ukraine with substantial funds and weaponry?
Well, I want to first state that I generally agree with what Mr. Springman just said in terms of the idiocy of this war. It goes against American interests, it goes against European interests, and it goes against the interests of the rest of the world. Now, what we're seeing in the vote in Italy is not a right-wing vote, it's a rejection of global NATO, a rejection of solving these problems by pouring weapons into Ukraine as a proxy. Now, the solution here is fairly simple. End the war. Stop sending in the weapons. Get a negotiated agreement. I personally think that Meloni is going to have a problem if she's going to stick with this idea of supporting the war, because from what I know in Italy, many people are opposed to the war, not just because of the sacrifices they're being called on to make, but because they're not necessarily opposed to Russia. Berlusconi, one of the coalition partners, and Salvini, in fact, have said on various occasions that they are opposed to this attack on Russia. We also see demonstrations going on all over Europe, in Prague, in Brussels. We saw a vote in Sweden that overthrew the existing government. So I think we're on the verge of a big upsurge, a hot autumn. And I think the results will surprise many people. And I don't think we can know exactly what Meloni is going to do, but I wouldn't assume that she's going to stick with what she said about going along with NATO.
Very nice indeed. And here, since we are joined just now by Mr. Mark Lowe. Mr. Mark Lowe, what kind of challenges is Meloni facing here forming a new government amidst all this crisis?
Well, I think that we can summarize into three very, very specific points. One, potential internal divisions. It's absolutely no mystery that one of her coalition parties, Salvini, although he's promised to work hand in hand with Meloni and to thoroughly support the coalition, remains a bit of a wild card. So how much can he actually be trusted? He's obviously, to put it very bluntly, very, very jealous of Meloni's success, and particularly the success of the Fratelli d'Italia party. Salvini's party has been hemorrhaging votes and membership, all to the benefit of Giorgia Meloni and her political party. That's one. Secondly, Meloni has no experience in government. It's very, very simple. She has inherited an absolutely disastrous situation. So one of the critical issues is going to be who Meloni surrounds herself by, not simply in terms of government ministers, but also in terms of advisors. And I'm actually rather positive on this. I think that Meloni is no fool. She's absolutely no fool. She recognizes that, for example, in terms of foreign policy, she knows absolutely nothing. She might be very, very good at establishing relationships with foreign political parties, but in terms of international affairs, she is absolutely dependent on the good and the wise offices of a number of people here in Italy. Unfortunately, she does have a number of very, very respectable people that are more than
It seems we're having technical issues with you, Mr. McLowan here. Let me just address this topic of energy still. Algerian-Italian economic ties go back to over 50 years, and recently CEO of the Italian energy company Eni, Claudio Descalzi, said that gas will be available during the autumn season thanks to the increasing rates of full stockpiles due to the high flows coming from Algeria. And here I ask you, Mr. Shuaib Boutamin, about how can actually Italy sustain this kind of flow, and how can it manage its energy crisis thanks to the support that it's getting from Algeria?
Good afternoon, first of all. Good afternoon, Karim. Good afternoon, all your respected guests. I believe that the declaration of the ENI CEO yesterday was an interesting declaration because it's a reality. Algeria, since the war started inside between Ukraine and Russia, many Italian leaders were in rush looking to diversify more energy supplies from Algeria, from Mozambique, and from Qatar. But Algeria responded very quickly to the call of the Italians, because we have already one pipeline in Algeria to linking Algeria to Italy. And actually, last few days, we were pumping like 85 million cubic meters per day. So if we respect this cadency, this cadency, we can get like 30 billion cubic meters per gas. This increase of production has not really done without any efforts. So many efforts have been really taken into account by the Algerian authorities and by Sonatrach. So we have been really, there is a process. Let me just open a bracket to go technically how to increase the production of natural gas. So we need to inject natural gas. We inject water in the big fields and reservoirs. And with this cadency, we reduce the life of our reservoirs. So we have to mention this, that a lot of efforts are on the ground and by all Sonatrach and all Algerian governments. So if we see the situation now in Italy and compare it to Germany, Italy is in a good situation compared to UK.
Yes,
also
exactly.
to
that was the next question for me. It's like, why didn't Germany follow Italy's lead when it comes to finding alternatives? So why not Algeria? Why go to Gulf countries?
This is a very good question. The message I want to call today is that Italians, they came a little bit invested more than the Germans here. But if Europe wants more supplies from Algeria, they have to invest more, because we cannot develop a field of natural gas in a couple of months. We need at least 7, 10, 15 years to develop fossil energies, oil and gas. So Italy just started that step, but Germany did not go through this step. And I believe Germany is a little bit late in kind of energy supplies. What the Germans need to do in Algeria now is to invest more in renewable energies. And I believe they have technology. They have technology in solar energy and how to absorb. They have all the technology to develop the infrastructure in Algeria, I believe. Let me mention something very important. Algeria in 2021 produced more than 110 billion cubic meters of natural gas, and we exported 55 billions. So at almost, the problem in Algeria here is that we have domestic demand of natural gas increasing, let's say 10% every day. So we are consuming like 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. If the Germans come to Algeria and to invest in our deserts, let's say in Bishar, in Tindouf, and the Ol and Adrar, the region we have a lot of sun there. Almost all the year we have the sun there. If the Germans take a right decision, a very smart decision, to invest in Algeria, and we save, let's say, save that energy, natural gas we consume locally, and we can really save it and to Germany, and we can export it to Germany. This is the investment the Germans they have to take. I have seen that the German Chancellor visited UAE. I think that his trip, is a little bit late compared to the Italians. The Italians were in a rush to Algeria, to many countries, looking to diversify their energy resources. This is completely the opposite from Germany. I believe that Germans were relying on Nord Stream 1, but let me open also the bracket on this. The situation last year was completely different. We had Nord Stream was pumping 55 billion cubic meters per year, natural gas per year, but Nord Stream 2 was on the way. So if the Germans gave the approval for that project, we could say we could get like 110 billion cubic meters. Today, Nord Stream 1 is open, is closed completely, and they halted any supplies to Europe. So the Germans now, instead to get like 110 billion cubic meters, today it's getting zero from Russia. And this, I think, this is a big mistake. They did not plan ahead compared to Spain, which have 6 terminals to regasification, and it's more in comfort zone compared also to Germany. Italy also has linked good connection with Algeria, political relations, energetical, economical relations, and I think they planned better ahead compared to Germany.
Very nice indeed. And for more on the energy file, let's go to today's second chapter. Discussion right after this. So as announced, here is the latest on this file. So Olaf Scholz culminated a 2-day trip to the Persian Gulf region by signing a gas deal with the United Arab Emirates on Sunday. But the German Chancellor's mission was overshadowed by human rights concerns amid Russia's halt in gas deliveries to Germany and skyrocketing energy prices in Europe. Scholz traveled to the region to secure alternative supplies for his country's energy-hungry economy. So let me get back to you, Mr. Schlanger. Germany, until recently heavily dependent on Russia for gas, has been seeking to diversify its energy supply since Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Can we say that the agreements signed during this visit are enough to replace Russia's gas? And as we asked previously the question, why didn't it take, let's say, Italy's lead? And when we hear of the event is being overshadowed by human rights concerns, what does that bring to your mind? West double standards when it comes to their interests?
Well, double standards and a lot of illusions. But I think the problem with Germany being late is that Germany did not intend, as of 2 years ago, to submit to a war plan of NATO, the US, and the United Kingdom against Russia. That was the whole point of Nord Stream 2, was to guarantee a long-term supply. The agreement that was signed with the United Arab Emirates is pathetic. It's pitiful. It provides 137,000 cubic meters over an unspecified amount of time, which is the amount you could get from 1 day from Nord Stream 1. The liquid natural gas deal with Qatar is not going to come into effect for 4 or 5 years. So Scholz went there with nothing to offer. And the real problem is the submission to NATO. And secondly, the green ideology, the fact that he's answering to Habeck, the economics minister and vice chancellor, and Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister, who are completely committed to the war. Baerbock even said that she will do what's necessary to win this war, no matter what my German voters think. Is that democracy? So I think what we're seeing in Germany is a collapse of the old, relatively pragmatic policies of Merkel into a leap into an ideological fantasy world, which is going to be paid for by average German families who won't be able to afford the cost of gas and oil heating this winter, even if the gas and oil is available.
Very nice indeed. And Mr. Mark Lowe, Europe is heading for a severe energy crisis, and energy prices have already skyrocketed, and companies and households will only be confronted with higher energy bills in the coming months. While rising bills are inevitable, the other big risk for Europe is supply disruption. What is expected, or what is the expected solution, let's say, according to you, taking Italy's new government into consideration?
Right. Taking Italy's new government into consideration, the first issue to focus on will be Meloni's government's relationship with ENI, Enti Nazionale Idrocarburi, so Italy's most important energy company. An energy company with a very long history, a presence in, I cannot even remember how many different countries, but in excess of 180, quite incredible. A company that has integrated itself incredibly well into a number of these countries. Algeria being a prime example. Italy began investing in Algeria a long time ago. It's a completely different relationship, completely different objectives, completely different scenario. So how will Meloni work with ENI? Because as we all know, ENI is almost a state within a state. On a number of occasions, it's legitimate to question if ENI follows government foreign policy, or if the Italian government, historically, has followed ENI's instructions on foreign policy. In reality, it's a mix of both. But it was certainly very, very interesting. In terms of the disruption, yes, when we have a number of companies that are the suppliers to, in this case, Italian companies, and there's a risk of these companies going out of business simply because they cannot afford to continue with gas bills and electricity bills that have become absolutely monstrous. So there is a serious risk, not only in Italy, but also in Germany. So, we have to stop for a minute and reason in terms of German companies at risk of going bankrupt. That's quite incredible. We could accept it in Italy, but we find it quite incredible in Germany. So these increased prices will, without a shadow of a doubt, have an impact on the capability of a number of companies to produce components that are used in supply chains. On top of that, obviously, we have the increase in transport prices. Transport relies on energy. Energy prices go up, transport prices go up. So we're looking forward to a very, very difficult winter, and we're looking forward to an even more difficult spring and summer. All of this in the hands, presumably, because it will take about a month until it is actually confirmed that Giorgia Meloni will lead the next government. It's extremely probable, of course it is, but there are formalities to be respected. So in about a 1 month's time, we will know the composition of this new government, assuming that Mattarella, the president of the Italian Republic, gives Giorgia Meloni the mandate to create a new government. Anyway, close parenthesis on this. She is now at the helm of a ship without any experience whatsoever in being the captain of a ship. So it's absolutely fundamental that she listens very, very carefully to the advice from well-informed individuals inside companies like ENI. And it's equally as important that she surrounds herself, which I'm quite certain she will do, because I repeat what I said beforehand, she is no fool. She may be lacking in experience, but she is not a fool. She knows how much she's risking. She knows that she has to take her new role with enormous responsibility. She has to be very, very serious. So I would imagine that we can be fairly relaxed in the assurance that she will surround herself by people that will be of great use to assisting Italy and, in part, the rest of Europe in facing what will be an extremely difficult next 6, 9, 12 months.
Very nice indeed. And Mr. Springman, what does, let's say, a collapse in industrial Europe mean to the US? And what about the narrative of sticking together, the US with its allies? I mean, we see Europe is going through very difficult times. And are we going to see some kind of support from the US for, let's say, saving the industrial Europe?
Well, I don't see the U.S. saving Europe. I see a European economic collapse as foreshadowing an American economic collapse. The United States does export a fair amount of high-quality, automated, advanced equipment such as aircraft and things like this, electronics and so forth, and imports a good deal of items from Europe as well, transportation equipment again. But with Europe failing and with the United States economy failing, they are mutually dependent upon one another. And if one does not produce, the other can't buy, and vice versa. So I think that what the United States needs to do is to realize that its policies are failures, that it has put people in office with remarkably stupid and incompetent policies that are directed towards destroying Russia, rather than enhancing the ability of the United States and Europe and the rest of the world to survive and to prosper. In my view, the key problem in Europe is the slavish German and French and British policies backing the Americans, and they don't realize this has long-term effects on them. I think that the German economy is a result of really bad decisions. I have friends in Germany telling me that the system there is like the U.S. Instead of having the best possible man compete for the job with the most ideas and the most workable policies, you have personalities. You have people that look good on television, and that's as far as it goes. And this has contributed to the mess we're all now in. Ukraine exported grain, and after much outcry, and it didn't go to the poor countries of the Middle East or North Africa, it went to the European Union. So I think that we need to look at reality, and we need to deal with reality, and so far that hasn't been done.
Very nice indeed. And the European Union is on track to be targets for filling gas storage. But analysts warn the bigger factor for energy security this winter will be whether countries can slash consumption enough to ensure stored fuel lasts through coldest months. What do you think, Mr. Shaipotamine?
Yeah, the stockpile, the storage of natural gas in Europe is ahead compared to the last few years. So they are like more than 87% in Germany and more than 90% in France. This is a good indicator that explicated why the gas prices rose too much in last summer, because all the European countries were really in a rush to fill up the storage. So we had recorded a very high demand in natural gas. So actually in the autumn, let me tell you something, that the autumn season, the fall season, we don't need too much energy for the consumption. So we don't have too much heat, don't have too much cold. So it's a medium weather. So this is, let's say, it's a calm. This is the calm before the storm. The upcoming weeks will be very difficult in Europe. If you have a good storage of 90%, doesn't mean that you are secure or you are safe in kinds of natural gas. With your stockpile enough 90%, will only sustain for 2.5 months. Imagine this is in normal winter. If we'll get very chilly winter, very cold winter, will consume it less than 2 months. So Europe today is not secure in kind of energy, in kind of natural gas. And the German Chancellor visits to UAE, I think it's not economical, it's political more, just to calm the German situation. Protesters are everywhere in Europe. So there is, I believe, in the next few months, there will be some issues inside Europe. They will say we'll have some conflicts inside. If we talk about the economical side, the Italians, they took the share from Qatar and from Algeria. I don't understand why they go to the Gulf countries, and Algeria is just here. We are just neighbors to Italy, neighbors to Germany, neighbors to the UK. And let me highlight that the UK is suffering an energy shortage like Germany or more, because the United Kingdom, they are out of the European Union, so they paid the bill very expensive. Many companies fled from the United Kingdom, many employees. So they had two problems in one. They have two problems. They had the economic problem before we had the COVID-19. We have the UK just went out of the European Union, and actually they have a problem of natural gas and energy gas prices. So the bills have been capped like 2,500 pounds for a household. And I think the situation also, we have to shed the light in the UK. They are in a very, very critical situation, like Germany, or maybe deeply, our situation will worsen in the next few months. I think that the solution I can give today to the Europeans, I tell them something. The megawatt hour in Algeria of electricity is 30 euros. And the last summer, it spiked to more than 1,000 euro in France. So if we see the difference, the gap is very large. What I call the investors in in Germany and the United Kingdom and Italy, just to bring their manufactories to Algeria. We have a low power, low cost of energy, and we have the talented, we have everything, we have technicians, we have very cheap labor. Algeria today has all the means to help Europe. We help Europe only not only by pumping gas, by pumping, let's say, gas, not the way, by attracting investors to Algeria, then take a profit of Algeria has in kind of the prices, very low price of energy. So why they look to get energy? Just to take their manufacturers, their plant to Algeria, and they can, at the end, we get a very cheap product and will be more competitive, more than any regional or many world makers.
Very nice indeed. And Mr. Marklo, I saw you earlier nodding to the comments of Shuaib, but I mean, perhaps I might be wrong. Do you agree what he was saying?
And it's very interesting to note how many European leaders are repeating continuously to the electorate that the stockpiles are 90% assured. The situation is very, very relaxed because we have 85%, 87% of what's going to be required during the winter, but nobody's talking about the fact that what you consume, you have to replace. So where is the replacement, in this specific case gas, where is the replacement gas going to come from? Italy is in a far better position than Germany, for example. But we have to replenish what we consume. That means forward thinking that should have happened in many cases a long, long time ago.
Very nice indeed. And here, Mr. Schlanger, Europe's energy crisis is destroying the world order, and energy proved to be a very effective weapon for Russia. How big is the impact of the energy crisis on the world, and is the U.S. economy safe?
Well, the U.S., for the moment, in terms of energy, is in decent shape. But the U.S. economy is under horrendous levels of debt, unsustainable levels of debt. But when you look at the rest of the world, look at the recent meetings of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Look at the BRICS Plus, which may include membership for Algeria in the near future. Look at the alternative institutions of the so-called Global South, the former non-aligned nations, who are cutting deals with Russia, China with Saudi Arabia using the yuan to pay for oil. There's a move away from the whole dollar system. And I think this is what is really behind this attack against Russia. The fact that Russia would not submit to the idea of the Great Reset and the Green New Deal. They won't give up sovereignty. And what we're seeing is that's encouraging countries such as Indonesia, Brazil, Argentina to stand up and say they're going to go along with the moves toward a new financial system away from the blackmail of the International Monetary Fund and the City of London. So I think the situation goes far beyond energy, but energy is the most immediate threat in a country like Germany, where there's not the ability to sustain with solar and wind, no matter how much technological progress there is, they can't store it. It's not adequate. And what's going to hit Germany is an industrial collapse, including BASF, the auto sector, the machine tool sector. That's the heart of German industry and the German economy. The U.S. is a
and
little.
And is the solution perhaps for Germany is to find, let's say, cheap labor, cheap markets, maybe install factories in third world countries, perhaps?
I don't favor that. That's the problem with globalization. I think we should be instead helping third world countries develop their own internal economies as trading partners and do it on the basis of recognition of the sovereignty of these other nations.
Very nice indeed. And next in our special coverage, the discussion includes Russia's referendum aimed at annexing 4 occupied regions of Ukraine, which is drawing condemnation from Kiev and Western nations right after this. Nearly 4 million people from the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and the southern regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia are being asked to attend polling stations and vote in so-called referendums on joining Russia. This follows 4 days of early voting during which allegations of intimidation multiplied as election officials went house to house, accompanied by armed guards. So let me address this to you, Mr. Springman. Do you think many people would want to join the Russian Federation? And can we deduce that this is the official end to diplomacy and no more diplomatic efforts between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, yes, I do believe that the ethnic Russians in the Donbass, the eastern region of the Nazified Ukraine, do want to join their brothers in the Russian Federation. They have been savagely and viciously attacked and murdered by the Ukrainian government, supported by the European Union and the United States of America. They've killed something like 14,000 ethnic Russians in the eastern region of the Ukraine. The Ukrainians are firing rockets and artillery shells at a nuclear power station in the region, which is sheer idiocy. The Ukrainians are doing their best to end the Russian language use there. They are engaged in repression against dissidents in the country, in the Ukraine. The president, Zelensky, has come out and said he wants the Ukraine to be a new Israel, with a soldier in every supermarket, gas station, and library. So I think that they have no intention of negotiating whatsoever with the Russian Federation or anyone else. They believe that with the backing of NATO, the European Union, and the United States, they will win against the Soviet Union, my God, the Russian Federation. And it's outrageous because the Russians have more smokestacks than the Ukrainians do. The Russians have more smokestacks than the Americans do. We've exported all our jobs and all our industry to China and other countries. So I think that the situation is going from bad to worse for the Ukraine. And it is in the best interest of the ethnic Russians in the eastern region of that country to join with the brothers across the border and form a stronger Russia and a weaker Ukraine. They will lose very good, capable people, and it's their own fault.
Very nice. And Mr. Schlanger, do you agree with what our distinguished rank, Mr. Springman, was saying? It seems that the U.S. and the West are really out of options. And I mean, the West, they have done their sanctions, they put pressure on Russia, yet Russia doesn't care, and the war still continues.
Well, I agree with most of his comments, and I'll go a step further. If Ukraine wanted to avoid this situation, they should have stuck to the treaty they signed called Minsk II, where they agreed that they would negotiate an end to the conflict and provide regional autonomy for those areas in Ukraine that were largely ethnic Russian. Instead, they continued to attack, as Mr. Springman was saying. So they have no one to blame but themselves. But then on top of that, you have NATO coming in and the United States coming in, arming Ukraine to launch this attack against Russia for the reason that the Secretary of Defense said in Ramstein, to weaken Russia. Why is the U.S. committed to weakening Russia? And it goes back to what I said earlier. The U.S. is committed to a world in which no sovereign powers challenge the sole superpower status of the United States, backed by NATO and the United Kingdom. That's what this war is all about. And the Ukrainian people are paying a heavy price for their puppet government in Kiev supporting this.
Thank you so much, Mr.
They could have had a neutral status, and they could have had an agreement earlier.
Yes, very nice indeed. Mr. Harley-Shangel, thank you so much for your thorough analysis and all these answers. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I would have loved to continue with you, Mr. Maklo and Mr. Shai Botamin here in studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Springman, also for your thorough analysis. And thank you, dear viewers, for keeping it here on All 24 News. This is the end. Bye for now.